Welcome to Pioneers in Payments, where payments experts share their insights. Now, here's our host, Donna Blum.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Pioneers in Payments. Today, it is my great pleasure to speak with Audrey Blackmon from Euronet. Welcome, Audrey.
Well, thank you for having me, Donna. I appreciate the time.
Well, I'm so glad you were able to join us today. I know you've been in payments for a long time and you have some wonderful insights to share, so we'll just go ahead and dive right in. To get us started, would you mind sharing with our audience a little bit about who you are, your background in the payments industry, and the work that you do at Euronet?
Absolutely. Again, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor. But I've been in payments for quite some time. In fact, it was 1990, so it's easy to do the math. Yeah, I first started, like most folks, it was by accident, knew nothing about payments. And I was asked to come into a startup called IC Verify, which was the first payment software. And they asked me to set up their help desk. And so I went in to do it as a temporary assignment. Within 3 weeks, they had offered me a full-time position in sales to set up their inside sales department. So I was very excited and took the opportunity. And that started my payments career. Throughout the last, I guess, 36 years at this point, I've worked for some pretty large companies and some small ones, some startups. I've been at First Data, WorldPay, Vantiv on the merchant side for about 25 years. And then I wanted to kind of chase technology. So I went to the issuing side to learn issuing and was grateful that I was able to work at Blackhawk and learn quite a bit about prepaid cards and gift cards. And that launched my career in card issuance, which brings me to Euronet today. I'll skip through all the other companies I've been at, but I've been fortunate enough to kind of chase technology during my career. And when you look at my resume, it only makes sense to me because I just, again, am excited about technology and new things. And so I've been able to craft my career in a way that will allow me to learn all the new things that are going on in the industry. So I've been with Euronet for about a year and a half and came to work for a friend. Always nice when you can work with folks you know in the industry. And I saw a great opportunity. Euronet, thus the name, even though we are headquartered out of Kansas City, most people think we're a European company, but we did start in Europe. But so we're a merchant platform. We also have card issuance. We also have a payment hub and an ATM software. So again, with my background being in merchant and card issuance, it was an opportunity to sell software that covers the spectrum. And so I'm very excited about what we're doing here at Euronet and excited to be here. So.
Well, congratulations on your new role. I guess a year. I mean, I guess we can consider that to
Fairly
be,
new. Yes, yes, yes,
yeah.
yes, absolutely.
Um, so we're really here to kind of talk about what is happening in the payments industry today. And I'd like to start off with asking your perspective on what is the most notable trend in the payments industry?
Absolutely. Well, again, having come from merchant as well as card issuance, the biggest thing is M&A, right? I mean, it's affecting all of us. The conversion, I mean, we just acquired a large company, which we're so excited about in technology, Core Card. But there's so much M&A that's going on. So consolidation, I think that's going to continue to happen. That's exciting, especially for folks like myself who love technology and new things. And then the other things are obvious when it comes to product. You know, there are things like crypto, embedded payments, taking something, especially since I started in software, taking something that's simple as accepting payments and embedding it in things that have not been used before. In the last 36 years, it's funny, it's still a payment, right? It's still a transaction, but how we're doing it has changed. And I think that's going to continue to happen and where it's being used. I recently went to an InsurTech show, for example, and I never really dug into that vertical. And as I started to talk to some of these large insurance companies about what they were doing in payments, I was surprised to find out that they're still doing a lot of paper, moving a lot of paper in the background. And I'm thinking, oh my, but then as I spoke to the companies that are offering them, in embedded payments, it sounded so simple, right? But in certain industries, I think we're going to continue to see some of the legacy players be replaced with the new modernized stack, right? And there's still opportunity. So I think that's going to continue to happen. We all think, especially those that are in payments, that innovation's already happened, but there are still a lot of opportunities in a lot of different verticals for embedded payments, for example. And of course, with stablecoin and crypto, all the excitement that's happening, the Genius Act this year, things that are happening in that space are pretty exciting. Using real estate. I just was talking to a guy yesterday about using real estate as an asset for crypto, and just for stablecoin and things like that. So it's very exciting about some of the things that are happening. But I think we're going to continue to see the growth of stablecoin for different things. Banks are really leaning in. And that's what it's going to take for the needle to move with stablecoin. Now that banks are jumping in and doing things, I just saw an acquisition by MasterCard even jumping in the space, being very serious about it. So I think that's going to happen. I think also as the revenues are eroded and margins are being squeezed, I think we're going to continue to see technology and AI take over. Certainly in the fraud space, I think AI is really important in that space because the fraudsters obviously move faster than we can ever think to move. So I think AI is going to be very helpful in that area in payments as well. But those are probably the major things that I see moving and changing, the landscape today.
Yeah, those are some great trends, and I actually really appreciate that you mentioned M&A. It's not something that many of my guests have mentioned as the most notable trend, but I certainly am seeing that across the entire industry. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, let's face it, it it does have an effect on what happens, I believe, and good or bad, right? I mean, having been in this industry for so long, there were so many different players, and I think that, and of all the different countries I've ever sold in, the US obviously is the most complex, right? I see companies, I help some startups come into the US. I've taken on projects in the past, and it's very complex compared to other markets, right? And so I think what we're moving to is a more simpler, it's kind of the reverse of other countries, right? They're very simple. The banks pretty much handle everything. You have very few fintechs outside the US, right? But I think with the consolidation we're seeing, I think it's going to simplify, if that makes sense, the marketplace, because again, it's very complex, right? I mean, merchant doesn't understand it all, but some of us, for one merchant transaction, it may go through 8 different companies, right? Depending on that transaction or more, So again, I think the complexity hopefully will be minimized, right? Make it a little simpler for everyone.
That would be nice. It can only improve, hopefully.
Yes, absolutely. And platforms like Ren, which is our platform, our payments platform that supports all of our business and our customers' business, you'll see more and more of that where you're consolidating some of those relationships. And again, I think through the acquisitions and as we see, the legacy players, the large behemoths that have been a staple for years, they're even changing their technology, right? And how they approach the market. So I think it's just going to happen through time. But yeah, M&A is a big deal. I mean, it's a constant. Every day I pick up a magazine or something and read, well, not an actual magazine, but read online about different M&A or hear from my friends in the industry that are affected by one way or the other by the M&A. And it, again, has an effect on, I believe, the technology, the people, everything in the market.
Yeah, I agree with that. So our audience primarily is payments professionals,
Yeah.
whether they work at an FI or a network or a third-party processor. In many cases, they're dealing with the technology in the back office, the tech stack, that sort of thing. So for our audience specifically, what would you say is the greatest opportunity in the payments industry?
Well, I think that, again, from a technology perspective, I think there's consolidation's important. I hear from banks all the time that there's so many vendors they have to deal with. As I talked about earlier, I think there's an opportunity. We see Payment Hub. There's unfortunately it hasn't really taken off the way we thought it would. But I think that the consolidation of partners is going to be important because it makes it very difficult for a bank or any entity to support all these different vendors, right? And I think technology is the answer. So I think there is going to be a move, even though it's been slow, to more of a hub or, way of managing those, or again, reducing the amount of vendors that they have. I hear that constantly from banks that just so many vendors they have to deal with, right? Which puts a strain on their back office. It's costly and hard to keep up with. So I think the trend as far as technology is consolidation, right? And of vendors or vendors actually being the hub, for the other vendors. I think, obviously APIs are going to continue to be important, but again, consolidation of those APIs, because it sounds so cool that, oh, we have an API. And now the bank goes, we've got to support 500 different APIs, right? And it drives us crazy, right? We think we're being efficient, but are we, with all the different support? So I think that's going to be critical, right? And then there are things also with account to account. I think that's really going to make an impact. We're seeing a lot of real-time payments. I think that's going to make an impact. It's been slow in the US, but I think it's necessity, right? And I think that's going to continue to grow in the industry. And so I think there's a shift. There's a shift that's going to happen where, again, reduction of vendors, real-time payments is going to, continue to grow in different parts of the industry. But I don't, and of course, crypto, I mentioned crypto. I think that's also an AI will have an impact, especially AI on the back office. We're talking about consolidating vendors. Potentially, maybe there's an AI opportunity there. But I think that those things are going to continue to grow and creep in into the operations in the back office.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we're definitely already having lots of conversations about AI.
Yes.
One of the things that we're working on right now, just a little plug, but we do have a dispute solution, and so we're looking for a way to utilize AI, like an AI agent, to do some of
Yes.
the very simple, straightforward disputes. You can take the human element out of those things because they are so they're just so straightforward. So that's there's endless number of ways to improve.
Oh, yes, yes. I mean, we just started doing this for RFPs. I mean, it sounds so simple, but it also controls some of the functions that happen. It takes the people out of it, the guesswork. When you think about it, when you're developing those agents, it's consistency, right? So, I see for someone like us that, again, we deal with a lot of data. And there are various ways you can use it. From a sales perspective, like I said, the latest thing we've done is with our RFPs, creating those agents. I mean, we're constantly, and that's a great problem to have, but we get RFPs. Most banks do go to an RFP when they're looking for vendors, and we're using those agents to answer some of that. There are answers, but again, pulling them, it's like a library, right? And it's so much easier because sometimes the questions are posed to us a little differently, but it's the same answers. So yeah, just simple things like that save time, but it also adds consistency, I think, from, the back office as well, for at least for those answers for an RFP, for example. There's so many use cases, right? But I think that, like everything else, everyone's jumped in and trying to use AI for everything, and I think that it'll level off after a while. I don't think AI is appropriate in every situation, but we'll figure it out, right? But I hear everyone, oh, we can use AI, we can use AI. And it may not be as appropriate for certain things, but I do believe that there are areas where it can save time and add some efficiency.
Right. And I think too that it's always going to, the ideal solution is always going to be AI plus the human element. Like you're never
Exactly.
going to
Exactly.
completely remove the human um, interactions, the human aspects. Yeah. So
It's like
it's
self checkout, right? It's
yeah.
not appropriate for every situation. You know, the
Right.
stores that move to all self checkout, and then they realize I see them bringing back the clerks because, again, we have a tendency to kind of lean in too far. And then another example, I remember when Google was so, I'm in California, everybody wanted that Silicon Valley office where everything's open. Well, that only works in certain areas. When you're a salesperson on the phone and you're next to an engineer, right? That open concept doesn't work as well, right? Or the other one Google started was, this work balance, right? Where they have everything there at the job, even beers, right? Everything was at, until something happens and they're like, oh, let's pull back, right? So, we have a tendency to be all in on these new concepts, and then we realize there has to be a balance, right? There has to be a balance. So, yeah, I think AI I think I'm most excited about the AI and the opportunities there. And then stablecoin, I think there's, like I said, some of the new things that are happening and the actual use cases that I'm seeing come to life are real, right? It's not no longer a concept, right? Of how do we use um, this great stable coin thing, and so I think again, once they come to fruition, things level out, right? We
Right.
figure it out.
Right. I love that. I mean, you can do some dreaming about how to use it, but I think it's
Right.
really cool when you see it like actually play out in reality, like
That's right.
the
That's right.
genius
And
of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And they say that's where the rubber hits the road, right? It's
Yeah,
at the
right.
execution of it, right?
So we just talked about the top opportunities for organizations processing payments. What would you say is their greatest challenge?
I think the challenge, again, I mentioned earlier, is always going to be the margins, right? When you deliver, the merchants expect, excuse me, on the merchant side, whoever the buyer is, end consumer's the buyer, right? And I think the margins are continuing to be squeezed, right? And we talked about the number of players. I think some of them get squeezed out after a while because of the margin, right? Follow the money. And we continue, like I started in merchant and we had different layers. We had salespeople, feet on the street. You don't see as many anymore because there's not as much money in it. You see these super ISOs that, there aren't as many sub ISOs anymore, for example. Same thing on issuance side. You have to be of a certain size to even jump in the game. I just think that the consolidation is going to happen because of the margins. You can build technology, but somebody's got to pay for it, right? And I think through time, that's what I mean by consolidation. It's just going to happen for a lot of reasons, and I think the cost is going to be one of them, right? And the opportunity. I think there's still opportunity, but again, the consolidation of the sales, for example, I think a lot of us will go direct instead of indirect because if you can cut out the channels, the cost starts to, the margins start to be better. So I just think again, consolidation is going to continue to happen because of the margins. So I think that's going to be the challenge, is keeping your margins, right? And being strong financially and finding the right solution that the buyers will buy at a certain price and you're still able to hold your margins, right? That's always the challenge. Always the challenge. So, but yeah, I think that that's the challenge. And then keeping up with it all is always a challenge, right? It's moving, at speed of light, right? When I think about how long it took us to get EMV, for example, in this country, how long is it taking for um, some of the other technologies come in? I think that with new players coming in the market, new technology moving quicker, you got to keep up with it. You can't sometimes, and you don't know if you're making the right decision because there's so many choices. You have to really dig in and understand it. So I think that's a challenge too. That's a challenge. Being an expert at everything, no longer, because there are too many things, right? So I know I've built, I call it my committee of experts, right? So if I need to know about something and I know someone's an expert, like in faster payments, for example, I have folks that I can tap on the shoulder because that's all they do is faster payments, right? So I think the way to keep up with it is to have a committee, but it's hard to keep up with it all. I mean, just reading the different articles sometimes becomes challenging. And like, oh, I hadn't heard about that. Oh, I hadn't heard about that. And so I think just keeping up with it all and the speed of how fast things change, I think that's going to continue to be a challenge for all of us.
I agree. Yeah, it's a little bit mind-numbing,
Yeah.
all that you're trying to do.
Daunting almost, right? It's like, oh my
Oh,
gosh, I can't keep up with it all. And that's why I love talking to startups and these folks with these great ideas and, bringing these use cases to life. And, sometimes I have to just stop and listen and ask the questions like, how did you start? Because again, peeling the onion so I can understand from my perspective what they're doing, because I'm coming at it from a different perspective. I immediately start thinking about certain things because of my experiences, like we all do, right? And so I want to take the old stuff I know and kind of put it on the new stuff. And sometimes it doesn't work that way. So, but it's fascinating. Some of the things, that these young entrepreneurs come up with. But again, if you're sitting in an office in a big company and you're working on in a certain area, how do you keep up with it all, right? And I don't know. I think that's going to continue to be the challenge. Maybe AI can help us with that, right? I mean,
I think
I'm
AI
on,
can, yeah.
yeah, I'm on the bot or the chat bot all the time because I go, what does this mean? Because even terms, people throw terms at you and you're like in conversation and I'm like, what is that? And so I'm constantly, but I love that. Some people, don't, but I love being challenged. So I love learning. So I see it as a good thing, but can't be an expert at everything. Grab something, go deep as you can. But being an expert at everything, not going to happen anymore. It's too much going on.
Right, right. Well, and I love your advice about, having a pool of experts, a team of experts that you can tap into questions, your go-to people, right?
And
Okay,
vice versa. They come to me for certain things as well. So it
right,
works for both of us, right?
right.
It has to be a two-way street, right? So I try to stay in my lane and be really good at something and get as deep as I can so I can be of help to them as well.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So, now, Mike, kind of to wrap everything up, if you had to leave our audience with one silver bullet piece of advice, what would that be?
I've kind of already said it. Learn as much as you can. I mean, never stop learning. And as I'm coming up to the end of my career, um, that has been probably one of the things I take away that has helped me stay excited about this industry for so many years. Learn as much as you can. Go deep, stay in your lane and go deep on things that interest you and you're really good at. The other thing is give back. I'm really big about, giving back and mentoring to people and um, being of service, right? I live my life that way. And there's always time. There's always time to lean in and help someone. And it's been so rewarding to watch some of specifically women that I've helped throughout the years and their growth. I get such a delight watching others grow. And if it was just a little bit of advice I gave them that was helpful, it just makes me feel good. I've started associations that have done well. That makes me feel good. I can leave kind of a legacy. So again, jump in where you can, but also be intentional. I was very intentional about learning. And so again, be open to learning. Don't let all the new things that are going on pass you by, or scared, and fear. Jump in. The water's not that deep. You'll be all right. you know. So, but yeah, that would be my advice: is those three things. Learn as much as you can, give back, and don't be afraid of new technology. So those are probably the things that come to mind for me.
Now, as you were talking about giving back and specifically, helping to mentor women, I know you've played a pretty big role in Paytech Women. In fact, are you still the president, or
Media past president. So we change. Yeah, we change at the beginning of the year. So our new president is Dawn Delaney with JP Morgan Chase, and I'm the immediate past president. Still on the board, still very active. But that has been 21 years of with that organization. I think we're over 7,300 members. We have chapters throughout the country and Canada. In fact, we're just starting up, I believe, one on that. We have Canada and Toronto, and getting ready to do Calgary, so on the West Coast as well. So we've expanded our national. We're America's now, but that has been definitely a delight and a highlight in my career, helping the founders build that organization, and being part of it has just been a great honor for me. So yes, it's been exciting. And it also was one of the founders of the Southeast Acquirers, which the acquiring shows. That's been, I think we're at 25 years this year. It has been fun watching that organization grow as well. And the all four of the acquiring shows have really done really well. So those are things that I'm very excited about, and many others, but those are definitely some highlights in my career that I've been involved with.
that's great. And I want to thank you personally because you actually were the person who introduced me to WNet at the time, but now Paytech Women. And once I became involved, I decided to get involved at a local level. So I've served on the Omaha leadership team for the past, I guess, like 4 years. So
Go Cornhuskers!
yeah. So Audrey, that all was because of you,
Oh,
reaching out and saying, "Hey, have you ever heard about this organization?" and scheduling a call with me to tell me
it's
more
so
about it.
easy
So
to do that when you
yeah.
feel passionate about something, right? Again, that's the me serving others, and it's easy to share your experience. That's all I did with you. I said, hey, I opened the door, you walked through, and your story is so similar to probably all the members were invited in by someone, but I've enjoyed connecting people, right? That's probably one of my superpowers is, the power of connection. And it's such a delight to connect people with the organization, with each other. And going back to Euronet, not to be a commercial, but I have that feeling here. There have been, like I said, throughout my career, I've had many different opportunities to work with so many different people. And the one thing that I really like about the organization here is that the people is so important, right? We all want to feel like we belong somewhere. And the people that you go to war with every day, you're in the trenches with every day, are so important, right? We can all work anywhere, but being a part of this team at Euronet's really been a delight for me. And, selling technology that's on the forefront of the industry has been fun, and I'm enjoying my time here, and hopefully, I'll retire from here and move on to do something else.
That sounds great. Um, so that's kind of a good segue that you brought Euronet up again. Before I let you go, would you mind sharing with our audience how they perhaps could get in touch with you or how they could learn more about Euronet and your technology solutions? What information would you like to share?
Absolutely. Well, it's really easy. My email is ablackmon at euronetworldwide.com. That's the easiest way to reach out. You can also go to our website, again, euronetworldwide.com, and complete a referral, a form, and that would come to me as well. We also recently bought an organization I mentioned earlier, Core Card. You can fill out a form there. It's a card issuing platform. So there are various ways to reach out. And of course, LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, and take my connections very, very serious and intentionally. So always can do that as well.
Well, that's fantastic. And I want to encourage our audience to reach out to Audrey to check out the Euronet website. And I also just want to thank you, Audrey, first of all, for joining me here today. Thank you so much for all the insights that you shared. And I want to thank everybody for watching. Have a great day.